Hello, my friends. This is Restricted Republic. My name's Justice Knight, today filling in for Lisa Haven. And literally, what just happened? Joe Biden goes completely unhinged. He authorizes the DHS to activate a Nazi-style SS task force called CP3. Have you heard of it? I can guarantee you that most of you haven't. And you know why? Because the mainstream media goes silent. They don't state a word. I'm going to show you that. And when that happens, you have grave cause for concern. This has been a long time in the making. We've covered every progressive step towards this. This is the final linchpin towards total tyranny. This is no joke. I'm going to show you the DHS documents themselves, the announcements, and exactly what they're about to do to us. But before I go any further, Lisa asked me to give a shout out to her sponsor, BioTrust. This is at healthwithlisa.com. Right now, get up to 51% off the Fountain of Youth. That's right. An amazing multi-ageless collagen supplement. Comes in a nice, convenient, easy package that you see here. Again, that's BioTrust. Healthwithlisa.com. Check out. There is now the capacity to make tyranny total in America. That from James Bamford, The Shadow Factory, the ultra-secret NSA. Boy, these words resonate more true every day, don't they? Only law ensures that we never fall into that abyss. Well, we are now in a lawless government. Unfortunately, the abyss from which there is no return. That becomes every day more apparent. This from your DHS, your Department of Homeland Security. Release date, May 11th of 2021. DHS creates new Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships and additional efforts to comprehensively combat domestic violent extremists. Those words continue to resonate, don't they? Out of Washington, building on the Biden-Harris administration's commitment to combating all forms of terrorism and targeting violence, Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas announced today that DHS has established a new Center for Prevention Programs and Partnership, CP3, to improve department's ability to combat terrorism and targeted violence. Of course, you and I know that has absolutely nothing to do with what's actually occurring. We're going to tell you what's actually occurring. And I want to first give a special thanks to John Whitehead's commentary from the Rutherford Institute. Total tyranny will all be targeted under government's new pre-crime program. That's right, the pre-cogs are back. By the way, all our references are at Lisa Haven News, also at justiceanight.com, and also, of course, at Restricted Republic, where we rebroadcast all these broadcasts on top of exclusive material with no commercials, no interruptions. All the references can always be found there. So what did John Whitehead have to say? The intent, of course, is for the government to be all-seeing, all-knowing, and all-powerful in its preemptive efforts to combat domestic extremism in a red flag, precog sort of way, of course. Where we run into trouble is when the government gets overzealous and overambitious and overreaches, as was the fact after the 9/11 event, as we saw. This is how you turn a nation of citizens into snitches and suspects. In the blink of an eye, ordinary Americans will find themselves labeled domestic extremists for engaging in perfectly lawful behavior that triggers the government's pre-crime censors, aka your neighbor, your teacher, your pastor, your doctor. But I digress for a moment. Of course, it's an elaborate setup. We'll all be targets. So this is big news. Big news. So I went out onto the Internet of Things, of course, looking for any information pertaining to this new department. And it doesn't exist. Silence. Radio silence. And why do you think that is? Well, because of what's within the documents themselves. In this Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships, there it is, DHS website, .gov/CP3. It's as real as it gets. This isn't conspiracy theories. They like to claim everything. No, not when you use facts, graphics, references that we do at Restricted Republic endlessly and tirelessly to prove to people that this all is real. But let's go into the actual document for the Center for Prevention Programs and Partnership. DHS was founded in the aftermath of 9/11. Its mission remains the same today: to protect the safety and security of the American people. Terrorism and targeted violence prevention is at the core of our mission. Following the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol, Secretary Mayorkas has committed to, and as he stated, redouble our efforts to fight hate and to fight one of the greatest threats that we face currently on our homeland, which is the threat of domestic terrorism. The Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships, CP3, supports communities across the United States to prevent, this is the key now, to prevent individuals from radicalizing to violence and intervene when individuals have already radicalized to violence. So let me put that and paraphrase that very quickly. We want to make sure we make your neighborhoods no longer a safe harbor for you, but a safe harbor for the U.S. government, of which we're going to train and teach your neighbors to spy on you and report you for any little idiosyncrasy you have. Don't get angry, don't stub your toe, don't yell at your car. That could be reported as potential terrorist, violent, extremist materials. And guess what? Somebody's going to come knocking on your door. I'm going to show you how they outline this. I guess they're simply upset now that they didn't get what they want. The Supreme Court restricts police authority to enter a home without a warrant. Oh my goodness, why would the Biden administration be so bent about this, I wonder? Is this why Biden's going completely unhinged now? Activating his new Nazi SS-style task force. Of course, we know they're all allegedly terrified of everything that's going on around them. House approves $1.9 billion for Capitol security. Defund the police, but fund our security. Protect us from the people that we're no longer representing. Because they aren't. They're a non-representative government at this point. But no, it has a lot more to do with this. If you didn't see the Minority Report or movies like it, then you wouldn't understand what a lot of this means. But the terror on his face should be exactly what you're feeling, so I'll move forward as to why. You see, this started a long time ago on January 27th, National Terrorism Advisory System Bulletin, put out by, of course, your DHS. And I'll read just a paraphrase of it. Details. Throughout 2020, domestic violent extremists, DVEs, targeted individuals with opposing views engaged in First Amendment protected nonviolent protest activities. DVEs motivated by a range of issues, including anger over COVID-19 restrictions, the 2020 election results, and police use of force have plotted, and on occasion, carried out attacks against government facilities. Long-standing racial and ethnic tensions, including opposition to immigration, have driven DVE attacks. DHS is concerned with the same drivers to violence that will remain through early, I gotta drop myself out of the way here really quick, through early 2021, and some DVEs may be emboldened by the January 6, 2021 breach. DHS remains concerned that homegrown violent extremists inspired by foreign terrorist groups have committed 3 attacks targeting government officials in 2020 remain a threat. Threats of violence against critical infrastructure, including the electric, telecommunications, and healthcare sectors, increased in 2020 with violent extremists citing misinformation and conspiracy theories about COVID-19 for their actions. You see, so if you don't believe in the government narrative, you're a conspiracy theorist. If you're a conspiracy theorist, you're now as dangerous as those who attacked on 9/11. That's the leap that the DHS just did and authorized and activated this new CP3 breach. And now here's where it gets really, well, if you know your history, you know exactly what's happening before your very eyes. And don't let anybody tell you it's not. And I'm going to show you why. It's as clear as day. How can you help? Same bulletin, same document. We asked the public to report suspicious activity and threats of violence, including online activity, to local law enforcement, FBI field offices, or their local fusion center. Your choice can make a difference. Choose nonviolent ways to make your voices heard and support friends and families in doing the same. Communities are strongest when they are not divided. Strengthen your community by standing together against violence. You will help us, the government, to get control of your nasty communities that don't agree with what we're doing, or our agenda, or our administration, or the non-representatives that are now sitting in Congress. But again, there was precursors to this. A message from Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas on preventing domestic violent extremists within the DHS. He wrote this little message here, of which he purged his own department first. April 26, 2021, just going down within this bulletin, it states, again, referring to the January 6th attack seems to be the springboard for everything. Don't watch too many videos. Don't learn too much about it. I digress again, remembering where we're at. Given the evolving threat landscape and the grave risk posed by domestic violent extremists, including to our employees and operations, I have directed the department to immediately begin a review of how to best prevent, detect, and respond to DVEs within the DHS. You see, what he did first is he purged his own DHS. He purged the departments. Only loyalists will be allowed. And why would he need only loyalists allowed? Nobody fully knew back then. Well, until this new CP3 department was formed to identify potential threats, to find the addresses of where they're located, to alert and caution fellow citizens to the danger that they present, to see what they're going to do. Minority Report, the precogs. I hope you remember all this now. If you didn't recognize the first scene, maybe you recognize this one, because this is what you're now living through this Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships. I'll go into the document to prove it out for you. The Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships, CP3, supports communities across the United States to prevent individuals from radicalizing to violence and intervene when individuals have already radicalized to violence, remembering that statement. These prevention activities aim to empower communities and individuals to be resilient to violent messaging and recruitment while protecting and championing democratic responsibilities and values. Every aspect of CP3's work consider and respect civil liberties and civil rights. Do you believe that? You could, until you start reading further. Consequently, CP3 works with communities to prevent these types of attacks, which include attacks on schools, workplaces, public gatherings, and other settings. The center helps build local prevention framework to provide communities the tools they need to combat terrorism and targeted violence. And how are they going to do that? Well, they have a great plan written. Prevention education. We'll go down into strategic engagement, addressing terrorist use of the internet. That's right. They're going to check your internet. They're going to check what you're saying. They're going to listen in. So just imagine you disagree with any movement that's going on. Let's say you disagree with Black Lives Matter. You go to a protest. You peacefully object. And the phone rings at the government office and says that you're a violent extremist. You engage them. And that government official on the other side of the phone happens to agree with the other side of the agenda that you didn't represent. Well, now you're on the threat alert status. So they're going to start by building public awareness that ensures all elements of society are informed of the threat and understand the radicalization to violence process. This includes the ability to recognize the risk factors for this process. They're going to teach the public this, even though the government can't even do it right. And awareness of how to enhance the protective factors that serve as the earliest prevention against this process. Red flag laws, pre-crime, precognition. This is everything they're talking about here. And how they're going to get this is through community engagement. This convenes the broadest set of local stakeholders to build and sustain trusted partnership and effective communication. They want as many of your neighbors involved as possible. They're going to build community engagement and education on how to identify threats that disagree with the current administration. Let's just say what this is all about. This enables localities to put awareness training into action by ensuring bystanders know about locally available resources, aka where's your nearest fusion center, FBI office, where can you rat somebody out the quickest, and how to get help for individuals who may be radicalized to violence. We got to get them help. We're the government. We're here to help. You just don't realize that you've been radicalized to violence simply by disagreeing with something. Land of the free. Home of the prisoner, because that's what this does. Oh, but it's not over. It's nearly over. Well, let's read it. Threat assessment and management that establishes and ensures access to multidisciplinary teams that can intervene with an individual radicalized to violence at the earliest moment. We're just going to go ahead and lock you up just for your own safety. Teams may include educators, psychologists, faith leaders, medical personnel, law enforcement, and others. Now, for those of you who studied history, this sounds eerily familiar. As a warning from history, this documentary was incredible, and within the documentary, it outlined the Gestapo. And more importantly, within the Gestapo, they weren't the ones who were actually the precursors to everything that happened. No, 80% of Gestapo investigations, 80%, were started in response to information provided by denunciations by ordinary Germans. Only 10% were started by information provided by other branches of the government. I want you to listen to that statistic, because our U.S. government knows this. CP3 knows this. 80% of all Gestapo investigations were started by neighbor reporting on neighbor. That's why the Nazi SS and divisions other like it were as successful as they were. They got the people to report on the people. 80% of all investigations started by your neighbor. Only 10% started by other government agencies. And that is why we titled this Nazi-style SS Task Force. It already exists in many forms that many of you may not know. WeTip. WeTip, Anonymous Crime Reporting Hotline. The framework's already built. It's been here. Reporting crimes anonymously, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. How to submit a tip, how to become a member. And we'll go ahead and we'll give success stories here and all the product tips and school safety programs and welfare fraud. And, well, there's the news release and all the successes we've had is WeTip. Citizens turning in citizens. They're not the only ones. Google picks up behavioral sensing company Behavio to sense your behavior behind the scenes through, all that information you're exchanging. Or this on the Washington Post, the new way police are surveilling you, calculating your threat score, built by many of the variables I just showed you, or those hundreds of words to avoid using online, including pork, cloud, and Mexico. This framework's been built, as you see here, for almost 10 years ago is when they started building it. They just needed the right administration in place to putting Big Brother in the driver's seat. V2V transmitters, black boxes, and drones, even your car is working against you. It's no longer a secret checklist, as this Intercept article states from the TSA. Fidgeting, whistling, and sweaty palms are just a few signs listed in a confidential document to help TSA officials nab would-be terrorists. Now, let me frame that in for you. They're showing you what their triggers were before. Mexico, cloud, pork, sweaty palms, fidgeting, whistling. Those are threat signs according to the U.S. government. Those will be folded into the CP3 framework when they train your neighbors how to identify threats in the neighborhood. They'll use the same methods they have before. Fidgeting, whistling, saying the word Mexico, or cloud. And don't think for a moment the government's power won't go untapped, won't go unhinged. It will. It already has. And he becomes more prophetic every day, doesn't he? As we move into this entirely new stage of something that we could have only wished would never have been activated. But it's now here, in real time. CP3 has been activated by the Biden administration and the DHS. Fellow patriots, this is never ending. We have to put forth the most active effort in history to assure, through peaceful means, as always, we must promote the proper elected officials, the proper method to assure we are once again represented and not non-represented by these modern-day tyrants. The only difference between what they're doing and the SS did is the uniforms they wear. A suit and tie doesn't make a difference when you're taking the measures you are to demolish any shred of freedom we have remaining, any semblance of the Constitution we still have. It doesn't matter the words you use when they're empty. It doesn't matter the actions you take when hypocrisy is your only law. It doesn't matter when you don't represent the people you claim to represent. You represent one thing only: out and out, unstoppable, unchecked tyranny. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. Lisa will be back with you shortly. Can't thank you enough for allowing me to be here. If you haven't gone to Restricted Republic, that's your way of supporting us. It is truly one of the last bastions of truth and reality. We do the best we can here to get you the news that they allow to get out. But you want unfiltered, uncensored, no commercials, no interruption news, restrictedrepublic.com. Discount code FREEDOM at monthly checkout, 24 months, $5 a month. Until next time, Godspeed and God bless. Justice Knight, signing out.